Chaina's Torment. Part 4. Master. Chapter 23. Master Chaina. Chaina started and looked for the speaker. He was in his private chambers with his hands in casting position facing the corner of the room. Deirdre stood in his doorway, all eyes and sharp edges. She appeared more nervous and timid than Chaina had ever seen her before. She seemed shorter and slighter, but she still had the eyes, the hair, the teeth, and the nails. "I thought you were dead," he said. He lowered his arms and bowed. "Oh, the first requires your presence, Master." Deirdre's face began to soften and melt, running like candle wax. "Don't go," Chaina said urgently. His vision fogged, and in Deirdre's place stood Fuller. She was smiling savagely. Slowly, she snapped her fingers in front of Chaina's face. Chaina shook his head to clear it. Fuller had vanished. Skellum stood before him, his hat tucked under his arm, his eyes shining and confident. Chaina's stomach froze when he saw Skellum. The fresh pain of his mentor's death told Chaina that the apparition before him was a lie. Rage soon churned up the pain, and soon overwhelmed Chaina's grief. "Remember me," Skellum said. Chaina angrily waved the phantom away. He closed his eyes tight, then opened them again. The only other person in the room was the frightened little blonde messenger. Hadn't she been bit by a rattler? Chaina reached for the wall, but his depth perception failed him, and he almost fell to the floor. "Big brother?" Chaina found himself propped up between the wall and the messenger's bird-like hands. "I haven't slept. What day is it?" he said. He stood and dusted off an imaginary cape. The first wanted to see him about the ambassador's new jack. Or had he already seen the first about the ambassador's new jack? It was something about the ambassador's jack, but a new something. The messenger was staring at him with an absolutely hilarious mixture of pity and fear. Chaina laughed and stood up off the wall. "Always make that face," Chaina said. "It suits you." "Yes, big brother." She gave him a gentle shove and guided him out the door. He remembered now. The first wanted to ask him exactly how much control they would have over Burke now that he had bonded to the ambassador. It was a simple matter and wouldn't take more than an hour. He would lie down on his cot when he returned, force himself to rest. Not that he was tired, of course. He just wanted to stop thinking for a while. His thoughts were starting to intrude on his fun, just as the Crusat intruded on his time in the pits. He watched the back of the messenger's head as they walked, and he felt more and more clear with each echoing step they took.
"The ambassador has expressed his satisfaction with your efforts, Master Chaina. Another job well done."
"Thank you, Pater."
"I understand that the demonstration was quite impressive."
"It was glorious, Pater. Burke performed even better than I'd hoped."
"And he's still under your influence?"
"Yes, he's bonded to Loquatus and will obey the ambassador's every command, but his essence is Cabal. Cabal magic, Cabal methods. He's Loquatus' slave, but he's a Cabal asset."
"And if you wanted to, could you make another?"
This caught Chaina off guard. "I suppose I could, Pater. Yes, if I had the Mirari to power the casting, a second Burke would be as powerful as the real thing."
"Outstanding. Let us retrieve the Mirari from the vault. I would like you to create a duplicate of the ambassador's familiar for me."
Chaina felt an idea forming, the first tingles of anticipation before a major challenge. "Such an attendant would be more durable than your human ones."
"Precisely, and in these troubled times I need to move about quickly. My retinue of guards and attendants is too large and unwieldy. If I could replace half of them, even a third, with a single body, it would be a great boon to my work."
"It would be my pleasure, Pater."
"Of course, you would be rewarded for this service. Is there anything you desire? If it is within my power, it shall be yours."
"I can think of nothing right now, Pater."
"Well, keep thinking. But now let us go off to the vault."
As they returned, the first peppered Chaina with questions about Burke's capabilities, and Chaina dutifully reported the answers. The first was more excited than Chaina had ever seen him, gesturing emphatically and waving his arms wide. His attendants were hard-pressed to stay close without accidentally being brushed. Chaina carried the Mirari reverently between both hands. Back in the first chamber, Chainer called for space, and the first had his guards and attendants all huddle against the far corner of the room. The first waited eagerly opposite his servants, and Chainer stood between them. He held the edge of his left hand against his stomach with the Mirari floating above his palm. He held his metal hand palm down over the Mirari, and closed his eyes. He held this position and concentrated for a long time, until some of the braver guards began to grumble and jostle the people around them. The time was now, he told himself. This was what I had been preparing for. It was truly time to impress the first. Pater?
Yes, my child.
There are two things preventing me from doing what you've asked. The first frowned.
What are these things? Can they be removed?
Chainer's eyes snapped open, the void in his sockets endless and impenetrable. I'd thought you'd never ask. The first impediment is that it's far too crowded in here. He unfolded his left arm and left the Mirari hanging below his right. A yellow glow shot out of the sphere, up Chainer's arm, and travelled out his body to his outstretched left hand. A massive bolt of black light exploded out of Chainer's hand and slammed into the throng of guards and attendants in the room. The room shook as the death bolt impacted, and some of the servants screamed before the entire group fell dead where they stood.
Chainer, what are you doing?
The second impediment, Chainer said, evenly, is that you sent Skellum into the pits to die.
Mazayura.
The first was regaining his composure.
Attend me.
Chainer felt the dominating power of his secret name take hold, and his muscles froze where they were.
I am the Cabal first, he snarled, and I do not explain my actions. Look at what we have gained, what you have gained from the death of a single man. Skellum's time had passed, and he knew it. I think you know it too. These are dangerous times, my child, and not everyone is going to survive. You are the future of dementia. You are the future of the Cabal. That future needs to be fast, focused, versatile, brutal. We need you more than we needed Skellum.
Do not say we, Pater. You do not speak for me in this.
I speak for the Cabal in all things, and you are Cabal. The oath you took is not some clubhouse initiation ritual. It's a powerful magical bond. You don't just quit the Cabal because your best friend is gone. You are mine, body and soul, for as long as I want you.
I've been thinking about my oath lately. In Mirror they say an oath is nothing more than a contract, and all contracts have loopholes. The first crossed his arms behind his back.
There are no loopholes in your sacred oath, Missouri.
My name is Chainer, he said, and of course there are. You only have power over me because I gave it to you when I accepted my secret name.
You accepted much more than that.
True, but if I could discover your secret name, Pater, wouldn't the roles be reversed? Wouldn't you be as docile before me as I am before you now?
No one has before known my secret name for 100 years.
Chainer heard the initial strains of uncertainty in the first voice, as he breathed it in like a delicious incense. I'm sorry, but that's no longer true. Calchexus. Chainer jutted both palms forward, leaving the Mirari to float freely at his chest. An even larger bolt of energy burst from Chainer's hands and totally engulfed the first. His panicked white eyes were the last thing Chainer saw before the first vanished behind a cloud of black light. Chainer continued to pour energy into the smell, keeping the first body surrounded by the roiling field. The first had lived a very long time, he reasoned, and it would take a lot of effort to kill him. He hadn't dropped yet, and Chainer had never seen anyone withstand the death bloom for so long. In fact, the first was still standing upright as Chainer continued to hurl killing magic at him. Die, Chainer whispered. With the Mirari he could keep it up for a week. He increased his efforts, and the first was physically driven back into the stone wall. He still stood, however, straight and tall against an attack that would have overwhelmed an army. After a full minute of pressing the first against the wall, Chainer broke off. The first body had been crushed into the stone behind him, and his fine robes were in tatters. He was panting and shaking, but he was very much alive.
You cannot kill me, Maziera. There's no way you can kill me.
Chainer blasted him again. A brief slap. Chainer! My name is Chainer!
You can never kill me, Chainer. I'm not merely called the first, I am the first. The first to worship Kuber, the first to receive his gifts, the first Kabbalist. I have lived for centuries. I have fed on bloodlust, greed, and brutality since Otaria was wild, and the Mer Empire was just another school of intelligent fish. I have been Kuber's servant since the very beginning, and nothing you do, not even from the Mirari, can prevent me from serving him.
Jaina ran his tongue over his teeth, perturbed. He expected the first to tell outrageous lies and convenient half-truths to save his own life, but here the old viper actually seemed to be telling the truth. At least he was telling the truth about the death bloom, because it was having almost no effect on him. So you're immortal?
In a sense.
Then I really can't kill you?
No, you can't.
Jaina sent a sharpened weight flying towards the first's face. It buried itself in the patriarch's forehead, and Jaina watched the first corruption crawl back along the links towards Jaina's hand. Jaina dropped his end before the toxic patterner could reach him, and the first actually fell to his knees, clutching feebly at his wound. I can try, however. Jaina returned his hands and the Mirai to their position in front of his stomach. The first slumped to one side, groaned, then got back to his feet.
We need to settle our account, Jaina. The city, the Cabal itself, may not survive another conflict between us. I suggest we come to an understanding.
With as much poise as he could manage, the first pulled the sharpened weight out of his head and let it clatter to the floor. Very well. You ordered Scallum's death. In return, I demand yours.
Your price is too high and can never be paid. I have a counteroffer.
Name it.
Cabal City is yours, he said, if you give me safe passage. The manor, the arena, the pits, even the Mirari.
And where will you go? Do you really expect me to believe that you'll just disappear?
I'll go south. Our stronghold in Afeto City. The Parliament of Knives is weak and ineffectual. I've been ignoring them of late, and they could use a firm, guiding hand.
And in 5 years, you'll come back to head an army of mages to retake Cabal City by force. The first laughed.
That would be wasteful and unnecessary. In 50 years, less given your recklessness, you will be gone, and I shall return unopposed. The Cabal is here and everywhere. I will take it with me, and it will be here when I come back for it.
You think so?
I know so.
Jaina grunted. I accept your terms. Here are mine. Jaina raised his arms over his head. The Mirari stayed between his hands. You will use the citywide grapevine to announce that you are leaving the city under my control. The Cabal still runs everything, but now I will run the Cabal.
No one will follow you, Jaina.
Everyone will follow me. I'm the Cabal's response to the Order Crusade, as you always intended. The entire city knows and fears me, and I intend to keep everything running smoothly. The anniversary games will happen as planned. People will come from all over Otaria to claim the prize. I will destroy them all in one fell swoop.
I agree to your terms.
The first seemed sullen and angry. Jaina wondered how long it had been since he had been at disadvantage during negotiations. I'm not finished yet. My personal representatives will be sent ahead to Afeto to prepare it for you, to clear the road before you and keep an eye on you once you arrive.
Spies, Dementist. That hardly seems like a warrior's style.
Not spies, Kabbalists. They do not report to me, but they are loyal to Kuber. You may lead them if you can, but they will be harder to dominate than the Kabbalists you're used to.
What do you mean, will be?
The first sounded as if he already knew and dreaded the answer. I mean they will be. Observe. Jaina put his hands out in the casting position. With the Mirari between them, his eyes went black and he shuddered. From between his hands a long tendril of smoke curled outwards, growing thicker at the front end. There was an implosion and a flash, and Jaina's new Kabbalist stood ready before him. The creature was a huge 10-foot serpent as long and heavy as an alligator. It sat on a coil of its own body, propped up by 2 horn-like claws where the coil rose off the floor. It had thin, flexible arms that collapsed against its body for quick strikes or rapid motion. Its head was big enough to swallow a cannonball without dislocating its jaw. It appeared to be a rattlesnake man, complete with a warning shaker on its tail and venom dripping from its fangs. "I've been thinking about snakes recently," Chainer said, "and I've decided I like them better than the people. A snake only strikes to hunt or defend itself. It specializes in graceful motion and deadly accuracy. Nature designed them to be elegant killers. I, in turn, have designed them to be perfect Kabbalists." There was another shudder and another flash, and a second snake person appeared. This one was longer and broader, rippling with muscle. It had no rattle and its fangs were dry. "The constrictor caste is especially good at stealth killings. Once it embraces you, you can't even scream. You should get along famously with these, Patter. You have so much in common." Another shudder, another flash. "And the king snake. Bigger brains, stronger arms, and deadlier venom. They will be those who give you the most trouble as you try to take over."
"What are you talking about, Chainer? How many of these things have you made?"
Chainer grinned. "All of them." The final flash blew the first against the wall and even drove Chainer back a step. The entire building shook. When the first had recovered, there was no one else in the room. No snakes, no attendants, only Chainer and the first. "My serpent cabal is now on its way to Alfedo. Scores of them. Hundreds. They will hunt and kill and feed and fight on the way. Those that are successful will become real, indistinguishable from things that were born instead of conjured. They will breed and spread for Altaria. Who is running a Fedo city for you now?"
"The Parliament of Knives,"
the first said warily. "Within a week of their arrival, my snakes will have overthrown the Parliament. If I were you, I'd get down there quickly before everyone who knows you is killed or driven out." The first nodded, angry but resigned to his defeat. He was staring at the Mirari as he spoke to Chainer.
"Well done, my child. I can't help taking pride in—"
"Shut up," Chainer said. "The only thing I want to hear out of you is your announcement to the city, and then, Cal checks us, you will leave. If I ever see you again, I'll make it my life's work to cut you to pieces, burn the remains, and scatter the ashes. I may not be able to kill you, but I can make you wish I had." Chainer closed his eyes. The Mirari glowed, and the first once again bathed in black light. The light did not harm him, however. It merely cascaded around him. "Speak clearly, Patter. All of your children are listening, and you won't get a second chance." The first folded his arms into his sleeves. After one final glare at Chainer, he began to speak.
"Attention, my children. This is the first."
Chainer tuned him out as his mind sizzled and sparked from one topic to the next. First, he would honor his agreement with Loquatus, who had been instrumental in pinning down the first secret name. Then, Chainer would crush all of those who came for the Mirari, including the Order and Burke and Kamal if they were foolish enough to compete. And then he would devote the rest of his life to punishing the first. If he couldn't kill the Patriarch, then he would take one thing from him that mattered most, the Cabal itself. With Chainer's snakes in a feto and the Mirari in his hand, it was only a matter of time before all of Ataria danced to Chainer's tune. In fact, he noted with a laugh, the music for the dance had already started in his head.